For decades, cinema sold us a terrifying lie. They projected a 15-meter leviathan onto the silver screen, a bipedal nightmare capable of snapping a Tyrannosaurus Rex's neck with brutal, effortless kinetic force. They painted a picture of an unstoppable apex predator roaring into the prehistoric sky, dominating the terrestrial landscape of the mid-Cretaceous. But evolution is not a Hollywood scriptwriter. It is a blind, calculating, and unforgiving engineer. And when we examine the fossil record, nature's cold, objective ledger, a catastrophic biomechanical reality is revealed. The cinematic myth shatters. If that projected movie monster actually tried to hunt on dry land, it would not be a king. It would be a stumbling, exhausted, and pathetic failure. Observe the biological blueprint of the Spinosaurus under the harsh light of forensic reality. We are looking at a machine whose center of mass is dangerously, almost fatally, front-loaded. It possesses a massive, elongated crocodilian skull, supported by a heavily muscled serpentine neck, all anchored to a 15-meter chassis. To counterbalance this extreme forward weight, a typical terrestrial theropod would require massive, shock-absorbing hind limbs. But the legs of the Spinosaurus are inexplicably stunted. They are short, heavily built, and entirely disproportionate to its colossal frame. On the muddy banks of its habitat, this creature does not walk with the terrifying grace of an apex runner. It pitches forward. It drags itself. Navigating the terrestrial world for a Spinosaurus is the biomechanical equivalent of a human attempting to sprint through waist-deep, setting concrete while carrying a solid steel anvil strapped to their chest. Every single step on land is an agonizing struggle against gravity, a grueling, energy-draining battle that burns through precious caloric reserves. Evolution is the ultimate optimizer. It does not waste millions of calories to build a giant, only to cripple it on the battlefield. Why would nature design a supreme killing machine that essentially trips over its own shadow? It left this paradox was paleontology's greatest cold case. We could not understand the machine because we were observing it in the wrong environment. We assumed the land was its empire. But to find the truth, we must leave the shore. We must strip away the cinematic illusion and plunge into the abyss. Welcome to the Kem Kem river system of prehistoric North Africa. This is not a sun-drenched open savanna. It is an oppressive, light-starved, underwater labyrinth. The rivers here are vast, deep, and choked with thick, suspended particulate matter. The water is a dark, murky void, tangled with the submerged, rotting roots of ancient mangroves. The atmosphere is defined by absolute hydrostatic pressure and claustrophobic isolation. In this hostile ecosystem, the land is merely a boundary. The deep riverbed is the true arena of murder. Watch as the exhausted, stumbling giant finally breaches the water's edge. The moment its colossal frame slips beneath the surface of the dark river, the clumsy beast vanishes. The punishing biomechanical friction of the terrestrial world is instantly erased. Gravity is suspended. Hydrostatic pressure takes over. To understand this transformation, we must engage the digital autopsy. We must look past the thick, scaled hide and the dense layers of aquatic musculature. We must analyze the very foundation of its existence. Exhibit A, the submarine chassis. In a typical theropod dinosaur, like the apex runners of the era, the skeletal structure is highly pneumatized. Their bones are hollow, filled with a complex network of air sacs designed to maintain structural integrity while drastically reducing overall weight. It is the perfect evolutionary blueprint for speed, agility, and terrestrial dominance. But as our X-ray overlay penetrates the Spinosaurus, a chilling anomaly is exposed. The marrow cavities are completely absent. The internal architecture of the bone is entirely wrong. The bones of the Spinosaurus are hyper-calcified. They are completely solid, lacking any hollow spaces. This is a severe biological condition known as osteosclerosis. The density of its rib cage and long bones is comparable to solid ingots of cast iron. To any terrestrial animal, this mutation would be an immediate death sentence, an unbearable, crushing weight that would shatter its own joints under the stress of a simple run. But here, submerged in the lightless, crushing depths of the Kem Kem rivers, this fatal flaw is revealed as an evolutionary masterstroke. If a creature of this immense volume possessed hollow, air-filled bones, the natural buoyancy of its massive lungs and internal cavities would force it to float. It would bob on the surface like a cork, utterly incapable of diving deeply or maintaining a stealthy ambush position on the river floor. By evolving hyperdense, lead-like bones, the Spinosaurus conquered the physics of buoyancy. It negated the upward push of the water. This dense skeletal mass acts as a permanent, internal, biological ballast system. It is the exact equivalent of trying to surface a nuclear submarine, with its ballast tanks deliberately flooded with solid lead. The machine was not built to conquer the Earth. It was engineered from a cellular level to sink. It drops to the river floor with the silent, terrifying grace of a dreadnought. Its short, stubby legs now making perfect mechanical sense. They are not meant for walking. They are powerful aquatic paddles, anchoring its massive weight against the heavy currents. But sinking to the bottom of a dark river is only half the equation of survival. In the murky, silt-choked waters of the Kem Kem, visibility is reduced to near zero. Eyesight is practically useless. How does a massive predator locate fast-moving aquatic prey when it is operating in a state of absolute suffocating blindness? This brings us to Exhibit B, the blind radar. Focus on the creature's elongated crocodilian snout. Under microscopic examination, the bone of the rostrum is not smooth. It is riddled with a complex, dense network of tiny foramina, microscopic pits and channels carved directly into the skull. In life, these pits housed an incredibly sophisticated neurovascular network. Bundles of highly sensitive nerves connected the surface of the skin directly to the creature's brainstem. This is not merely a jaw. It is an active, biological sonar array. As the Spinosaurus waits in the abyssal gloom, entirely motionless, it does not rely on its eyes. It feels the water. When a massive prehistoric fish, like a coelacanth the size of a modern car, swims through the murky void, its movement displaces water, creating microscopic pressure waves. The neurovascular sensors on the Spinosaurus's snout detect these infinitesimal kinetic ripples. The biological computer processes the trajectory, the speed, and the mass of the approaching target in fractions of a second. It is hunting with the cold, calculated precision of a guided torpedo locking onto a thermal signature in the dark. Yet, executing a violent strike underwater presents a massive physical challenge. Water is roughly 800 times denser than air. When a 15-meter predator lunges forward to snap its jaws, the water resistance pushing back against its body is immense. The lateral forces threaten to throw the massive creature completely off balance, rolling it over and ruining the ambush. Nature solved this problem with the creature's most iconic, yet misunderstood feature. Exhibit C, the control tower. Rising from its vertebrae are massive neural spines, some reaching over 2 meters in height, creating a colossal dorsal sail. Early science theorized this was merely for display, a billboard for mating, or a simple radiator for a cold-blooded reptile. But viewed through the lens of biomechanical fluid dynamics, a far more lethal function emerges. This sail is a highly tuned hydrodynamic stabilizer. As the massive head and neck violently whip sideways to execute a strike, the water resistance attempts to destabilize the creature's center of gravity. The dorsal sail, cutting through the water, acts exactly like the deep, heavy keel of a high-speed racing yacht cutting through turbulent waves. It anchors the creature's kinetic energy, preventing it from rolling and directing all of its explosive muscular force purely into the forward lunging motion. Furthermore, the immense surface area, laced with its own complex network of blood vessels, acts as a thermodynamic regulator, allowing the creature to shed excess metabolic heat generated by its massive aquatic muscles, or absorb warmth from the sun when it momentarily breaches the surface. It is a perfectly balanced, closed-loop biomechanical system, sinking, sensing, and stabilizing. The target is within range. The pressure waves hit the snout. The calculation is complete. The strike is initiated. The massive neck muscles fire, driving the skull forward through the dense water. The dorsal sail slices the current, maintaining absolute structural balance. The jaw, powered by immense adductor muscles, snaps shut. The kinetic impact mimics a pair of industrial hydraulic steel presses colliding. The conical, interlocking teeth, designed not to slice, but to pierce and hold, puncture the armored scales of the prey. Absolute structural fracture is achieved. The subsurface structures of the target are instantly compromised. Arterial fluid plumes into the dark water, masking the final, violent thrashing. The biological machine has successfully executed its programming. The Spinosaurus was an evolutionary triumph, a specialized, hyper-dense aquatic dreadnought that completely surrendered the terrestrial world to dominate the dark, crushing abyss of the rivers. But the Darwinian code contains a chilling warning echo. Extreme specialization is the ultimate biological gamble. The Spinosaurus optimized its entire genetic lineage for one highly specific, waterlogged reality. It traded adaptability for absolute aquatic dominance. But the Earth is a restless, shifting entity. As the mid-Cretaceous period progressed, the global climate began to alter. The vast, deep river systems of the Kem Kem slowly began to dry. The deep, dark channels shrank into shallow, stagnant pools. The Spinosaurus was trapped. The hyper-dense bones, the very ballast that made it a submerged god, became an inescapable, fatal anchor. As the preyed water retreated, exposing the muddy banks, the creature was forced back onto the land it had evolutionarily abandoned. But its body was too heavy. Its legs were too short. It could no longer chase. It could no longer hide. It was a multi-ton submarine, stranded in a shrinking puddle, watching its dominion evaporate into the air. Nature does not reward specialization when the fundamental rules of the environment change. The greatest aquatic predator of its era slowly starved to death, pinned to the earth by the weight of its own evolutionary success. It drowned in the air, betrayed by its own perfect density. But it was not the only prehistoric machine to be entombed by its own biological armor. Deep beneath the ancient oceans, millions of years prior, another titan was suffering a different kind of claustrophobic nightmare. A heavily armored biological tank, completely invincible to the outside world, was quietly starving to death inside its own impenetrable fortress. Accessing the Dunkley Osteosclerosis file,